Hi, thanks for joining us. Today I've got a lovely project which would be perfect for any unicorn crazy girl or woman or man in your life for that matter. It's a lovely way to do applique of a unicorn's head. Normally with applique what you do is you would end up doing a zigzag stitch around the outlines, but sometimes it can look a bit messy. So this method gives you a much cleaner line, and it does take longer, but it's a much better finish. So let me just pop the cushion on the floor. If you have a look in the description below, we will have some templates for you of a unicorn head, the mane, the forelock and the horn. And what I would recommend you do is if you download them and then stick them onto a piece of card and cut them out, so that you can then trace around them onto the back of a piece of fabric with a soft pencil. But just make sure you label them the right way up, so that when you're doing different bits of fabric, you don't end up with a head facing to the left and the mane facing to the right, because you will just get very annoyed, because I have done that. And you'll end up with this. Here's my head piece, here's my main piece, and it's just tacked or pinned onto a piece of plain white, in fact this is polycotton, just any scrap fabric that you have. And you'll notice what I've done is I've only cut it out roughly. I haven't cut it out to the shape of the unicorn, and there's a reason for that. It's because it makes your life much easier. So set your machine to about a 2.5 millimetre straight stitch, and you can start anywhere on the head of the unicorn, and just use your drawing line as a guide. Ease it round corners by just using your hands to pivot the fabric. If the corner is too tight or the curve is too tight, keep your needle in and just move the fabric to essentially retrace that drawn line with your stitches. And it doesn't matter if you veer off the line slightly, as I have done there, because no two unicorns are the same. Get to the ear, put the needle in and pivot. And go right the way to the end, or right the way back to the beginning, before you lock your stitching off. And I know some of you will be sitting there going, well, she's done that. How's she going to turn it inside out? It's fine. There is a method to my madness. So take your pins out. One thing I would recommend you do invest in, if you're going to do projects like this, is a good pair of pinking shears. Because I am forever clipping curves to turn things out on tight corners, and actually, if you just use a nice sharp pair of pinking shears, you can cut notches into the edge of the fabric as you go, and it just saves so much time. And also, you've got less risk of accidentally clipping your stitching. So we'll cut this, and it's a pretty bare seam allowance on this. I mean, it's sort of 5 mil at the widest edge of the zigzag, and probably about 1.5 millimetres on the internal angle. But you don't need an enormous seam allowance, because these seams aren't really going to go through any stress. They're not going to be pulled apart. And as you can see, I'm not actually cutting on that drawn line, I'm cutting on the stitching line, because doing it in a hurry, I wasn't really following the drawing line, but it'll be okay. When you get up to a really tight corner, like the angle of the chin, don't try and get right up there with pinking shears, because you will you do risk cutting the seam. Just get back in there and cut around the mouth and the nose. Oh. And the reason there's so much excess fabric to cut off is I always find, especially when you're sewing sort of intricate designs where you're turning the fabric, it's much easier to have a lot of fabric to hold on to while you're turning it. And it just takes the same amount of time to trim it afterwards as it would do to trim it in the first place. Just pop them in the bin. And I will just make one cut up here for the chin. And I'm just going to cut off the bottom here. So the turning out bit is very simple. Because this is going to be applique, you're only going to see the patterned part of the fabric. You're not going to see the second layer. So you can simply pull the two layers apart, make a tiny snip in the backing fabric, which you then can enlarge, and then you can turn your unicorn out through that slit in the backing. And then if you grab somewhere, oh look, there you go. Grab something like a knitting needle, nothing that's too pointy, because you don't want to risk pushing the needle through your fabric like I did there, and be gentle with it. Just push them out or roll them out. And then once it's done, you can ease out this chin bit. And I won't lay this flat on the mat because, as usual, I've chosen to do it in a colour that's almost the same as the cutting mat. Tell you what. Pop them on an ironing board and really manipulate out those seams so you've got the curve of the head and the nose and the mouth, like so. You do the same for the mane and the forelock. I'm not going to do them as you watch demonstration, because as you can imagine, with the number of angles and curves there are, it's going to take me about 10 minutes to turn that out effectively and get it pressed. But when you've done it, what you should end up with is your unicorn, the head, the forelock, the mane, and I've used a metallic leatherette for the horn. Pin it on place on a background, whether you want to do it as a coordinating patchwork background, or you want to put it on a tote bag or a cushion as we had earlier. And then quite simply, rather than machine stitch in place, if you just take a needle and thread and you sit down with your favourite box set on and sew it in place with a very small oversew stitch. So come out of the fabric and go back, just catching the edge of the applique, and come out about 5 mil away. Make a tiny perpendicular stitch and come out 5 mil away. And keep sewing it. Once you get the hang of it, you can get quite a speed up. And it secures it onto your fabric with an almost invisible stitch. So again, I'm not going to sew all of this in place. You know how to sew something onto something else. But it is one of those things you can just do it while you're sat, with it on your lap when you've got a spare 10 minutes. Creative design on here. It's quite a versatile template actually. You don't just have to use it for applique, you could use it for paper crafting. You couldn't use it for a soft toy, but you could pad out some of these pieces before they're sewn in place so you've got a raised effect. And then simply make the eye and the nostril from buttons, as I have here. This is when I wish I hadn't dropped the cushion on the floor. So yeah, I've just got layered buttons here as the eye and the nostril. So download the template from the description below. Do what you like with it. Make what you like with it. You could even applique it onto the back of a denim jacket or onto a favourite t-shirt, but it's a definite must for all the unicorn fans in your life. So please let us know what you think of it, and please send us photographs on our Facebook page. Till then, see you soon, and thank you very much for watching. If you've been inspired to create, please share your makes with us in the comments section below. And if you've enjoyed videos by the Crafts channel, hit the like button. Want to see more of us? Then click subscribe. See you next time.